It was a sunny, ordinary day, until he walked in. Henry, a well-dressed attorney with an aura of calm self-assurance, stepped into a small downtown bookstore. His demeanor was relaxed, his intent simple. Browse for a legal thriller to enjoy over the weekend. But one thing about him wasn't understated. The bright red MAGA hat perched on his head. It seemed to shout louder than any words, though Henry himself appeared oblivious to its power. Nearby, Karen was meticulously scanning a display of self-help books. Her sharp eyes landed on the hat, and her expression hardened, as if Henry had insulted her by merely existing. To Karen, the hat wasn't just an accessory. It was a challenge, a declaration of everything she opposed. And Karen never backed down from a challenge. Her heels clicked sharply against the wooden floor as she approached Henry, every step radiating indignation. "Excuse me," she said, standing inches from him. Her voice was tight, loud enough to draw a few glances. "Do you really think it's appropriate to wear that here?" Henry looked up, his calm, unbothered demeanor contrasting sharply with Karen's flaring nostrils. He raised an eyebrow. "Good morning to you too," he replied, his tone polite but with a faint hint of amusement. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. "Don't try to be clever. That hat is offensive to everyone in this store. You should be ashamed of yourself." Henry closed the book he was browsing, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "It's just a hat, ma'am," he said evenly. "I'm here for a book, not a debate." Karen's face reddened. The nerve! How could he be so calm? She jabbed a manicured finger toward him. "People like you are why this country is falling apart." Henry glanced around the store. A few patrons were now watching with open curiosity, some clearly entertained. "Look," he said, his voice still composed. "I'm just here for some light reading. Why don't we both move on with our day?" "Oh no," Karen snapped, yanking her phone from her oversized bag. "People need to see this. I'm recording this harassment right now." Henry blinked. "Harassment? I'm standing here, reading a book." Karen thrust her phone closer, framing him like she was capturing Bigfoot. "We'll see what the court of public opinion has to say about that." Her voice had risen several decibels, drawing even more attention. Henry exhaled and casually slipped a hand into his jacket pocket, where his trusty dictaphone was already recording every heated word. This wasn't his first Karen encounter, and he doubted it would be his last. The store was now alive with whispers, stifled laughter, and the soft click of Karen's manicured nails against her phone screen. Karen wasn't content with merely recording the encounter. Oh no, she was just getting started. With her phone still trained on Henry, she raised her voice further, loud enough to carry over the soft jazz playing in the background. "He's intimidating me with his hateful symbols," she exclaimed, her tone trembling with exaggerated distress. Heads turned. A man flipping through cookbooks froze mid-page, while a couple near the register exchanged wide-eyed looks. Henry stayed perfectly calm, leaning lightly against a nearby shelf. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm as a still lake. "You approached me. You're the one raising your voice." Karen's eyes narrowed into slits. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she sneered, jabbing her phone in his direction. "But people like me won't stay silent. This is hate speech, plain and simple." The store manager, a young woman who looked like she'd much rather be anywhere else, approached cautiously. Her name tag read Jenna, and her face wore the universal expression of retail workers caught in someone else's drama. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, glancing nervously between Karen and Henry. Karen immediately redirected her fury. "No, everything is not okay," she barked, turning her glare on Jenna. "This man is creating a hostile environment. You should ask him to leave." Henry sighed deeply, setting down the legal thriller he'd been holding. "I'm just here to buy a book," he said, his tone edged with weariness. "But if this is causing trouble, I'll head out." "Oh no," Karen snapped, stepping in front of him like a linebacker. "You don't get to walk away after making me feel unsafe." Her dramatic tone was worthy of an amateur theater audition. By now, the store was in full spectator mode. A few patrons held up their phones, recording the absurd scene. Someone even whispered, "World's gone mad." Karen finally delivered her pièce de résistance. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," she screeched before storming out, her heels clacking like punctuation marks. Henry shook his head, chuckling softly as he approached the counter. "Just the book," he said to the stunned cashier. As he left, the muffled chuckles of other customers and the faint hum of his dictaphone were his only companions. 2 weeks later, Henry unfolded a crisp envelope marked with the ominous words, "Notice of legal action." The sender? Karen. Of course. According to her lawsuit, he had cornered her, shouted threatening slurs, and incited fear so profound it could rival a Hitchcock thriller. Henry read through the accusations, shaking his head with an amused smile. As an attorney, he'd seen plenty of frivolous lawsuits, but this one? This was a masterpiece of exaggeration. At the pre-trial meeting, Karen sauntered into the room, her heels clicking like a metronome of smugness. She was accompanied by a sharp-suited lawyer who wore the determined expression of someone deeply misled. Karen didn't so much as glance at Henry as she launched into a dramatic retelling of events, complete with embellishments so grand they deserved an Oscar. "He cornered me," she said, clutching an imaginary strand of pearls. "Shouted at me, gestured aggressively. I was terrified for my life." Her voice quivered for effect as her lawyer nodded solemnly, jotting notes. Henry sat back, letting her performance run its course. When it was finally his turn, he leaned forward, pulling a small device from his pocket and setting it on the table with deliberate calm. "Your Honor," he began, addressing the mediator with a polite smile. "I record everything for professional reasons. Here's the audio from that day." Karen's smug confidence evaporated like steam from a boiling kettle. Her eyes widened as the recording began to play. Henry's measured voice calmly said, "Good morning," followed by Karen's shrill tirade about symbols of hate and demands for him to be exiled from the bookstore. The room filled with awkward silence, punctuated by Karen's progressively louder accusations, which, in hindsight, sounded more absurd than threatening. When the recording ended, the mediator removed her glasses with a sigh. Karen's lawyer turned to her, his jaw tight. "Karen," he hissed, his voice low but cutting. "Is this true?" Karen stammered, her face pale. I didn't think he had proof." Henry leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head. "Always prepared," he said lightly, savoring the moment. The mediator dismissed the case minutes later, leaving Karen to shuffle out, her heels echoing a hollow retreat. The lawsuit was dismissed within minutes. Karen's lawyer apologized profusely before quietly exiting the room. Karen, on the other hand, didn't go down without a final outburst. "You tricked me!" she shouted. "No decent person carries a recorder everywhere." Henry stood, calmly gathering his belongings. "Some of us believe in accountability," he said. "Maybe you should try it sometime." Karen's meltdown wasn't over. "This isn't the end of this," she shrieked as Henry walked out of the courthouse. Within hours, the story went viral. Someone from the bookstore had filmed Karen's tirade, and the combination of that video and the courtroom drama turned her into an internet meme overnight. #KarenMeltdown trended for days, while Henry quietly resumed his life, enjoying his newfound reputation as the calm and collected guy who defeated the ultimate Karen. The story ended with Karen facing the fallout of her actions, while Henry became a quiet hero for anyone tired of unnecessary drama. His dictaphone? It became a legendary symbol of patience and preparation. And the MAGA hat? It stayed firmly on his shelf as a reminder of a story he'd never have to record again.